Hi, everyone. My name is Will Neville Rabin. I'm executive editor at Torrey House Press, and we're thrilled to have you joining us this evening for a celebration of salmon. We're going to get started a couple minutes late to give folks time to filter in. So this is your warning, since you are on the early side, that if you would like to go grab a beverage or take a really quick stretch, now's your time. We'll probably get started in 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you so much for being here. And Vivian and Mary and MC, we do not need to just sit here awkwardly and stiffly. It is fine if you want to continue to chat and visit and all of the things. So
Sounds good. Thank you.
excellent.
Vivian, what poem are you reading to open?
The what we are about to receive. So it's the first poem in the book.
I love it. I thought that was so good. Yeah, I read that one, and then the other one was in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to read a couple of them. So thanks for sending that over.
I love them all. That'll be a good one to start with.
Yeah.
MC, did you read them all already?
I did. It's because I blurbed the book. So I
Okay.
got a
I was
copy
like,
before the
dang.
yeah.
I'm
I
like,
gotta make
you
sure I had
are an overachiever.
yeah. No, not that much of an overachiever.
Oh man, that's great.
Great.
Really fun.
All right, for those of you who have joined us in the last 90 seconds and are wondering why we're just sitting around gabbing, we are intentionally waiting a few minutes to give folks a chance to join. We've had a exciting number of folks sign up for this evening. Thrilled to have you with us, and we'll probably get started in 1 or 2 minutes. So refresh your beverage of choice. Now is the time, because once we get started, we have three brilliant women and a lot of salmon to talk about. So very excited to be spending the evening with you.
I think it was Scout's idea to do the panel because I wanted to do something different. And she suggested this or something. And we kind of brainstormed into this format. And I was so happy that I don't have to be here by myself.
No, stuff is always better in conversation, and it means that we get to
Yeah.
surround you with people who are very eager to get to brag on you on pub day. In addition to getting to hear some fantastic stuff from Mary and Mary Catherine. So, all right. Well, let's get going. I'm sure we'll have a few more folks join us as we go. We are recording this evening. So if you have friends who you would like to gloat to that you got to see this live and that they should join us next time, we will send out an email in the next couple of days with a link to the recording, as well as some other fun goodies from our presenters. So again, thank you so much for being here. My name is Will Neville Rabin. I am co-executive director and executive editor at Torrey House Press. We are a nonprofit independent literary publisher based out of Salt Lake City, working with authors all across the American West, which we at this point sort of consider anything from the border of the Mississippi all the way to the edge of Alaska. And so as the only person on screen not in Alaska this evening, I am thrilled to be joined by three brilliant and fabulous humans. And as we were prepping for this last week, it was particularly fun because all three of these folks know each other pretty well. So we're going to do something a little bit different. I have the privilege of introducing Vivian Faith Prescott, who is the author of 13 books, 14 now, most recently, The Divination of Salmon, which if you have a copy, you are already ahead of the game. If you don't, you can find it wherever books are sold and at torreyhouse.org, which is our website. This is a gorgeous collection of poetry about salmon and the human relationship, both with salmon as a particular fish and also with place, and exploring our relationship to each other and our relationships to the natural world. Vivian holds an MFA from the University of Alaska Anchorage and an MA from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And I'm going to ask Vivian as we get started, can you tell us where where are you joining from, and who are you? What should we know about you and your relationship both to Alaska and to salmon specifically?
I am in Wrangell, Alaska, and Achkanaap is the Tlingit name. And it's in the southern part just of Alaska in the island chain, the Alexander Archipelago, just at the mouth of the Stickeen River, which is the fastest flowing navigable river in the United States. I should say that 3 times real fast. And it's the home of Tlingit Ani, and so the Stickeen Kwan is here, and this is a small island. It's shaped like a snow goose flying to the Stickeen River flat. So if you do Google Maps, you can see it. And the fish camp where I live, which is basically my home, a few cabins right next to the ocean, is right at the throat of the bird. So that's where I live. And I have lots of grandchildren, and I even have great grandchildren, believe it or not. And some of my family should be in the audience. And so, hi, family.
Hi, fam.
Yeah.
Excellent. I don't, just for the record, I don't believe that you have great grandchildren, but that is no disrespect to them. I'm thrilled that they, exist, but also okay. We also learned, so today is the official pub day for Divination of Salmon. So it is always particularly exciting when we get to do these events with an author on the actual pub day. We also learned that your birthday as a human rather than as the mother of a book baby is coming up in a week or so. So, double happy birthday to you. And to switch it up a little bit, since Mary and Mary Catherine also know each other relatively well, it is going to be much more enjoyable for all of us if I ask them to take a moment to introduce each other rather than me reading off their bios. So, Mary, would you mind going first?
Absolutely. All right. Mary Catherine Martin also goes by MC, is the Communications Director of Salmon State, an Alaska-based initiative dedicated to protecting wild salmon populations statewide. Mary came to Salmon State from the world of newspapers and has won numerous awards for her writing, including first place honors for outdoors writing, science writing, and culture reporting at the annual Alaska Press Club Awards. An adventure at heart, she retraced the Klondike Gold Rush Stampeders route over the Chilkoot Pass and down 600 miles of lakes and rivers in 2017 as research for a novel.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mary.
Thank you, MC.
Yeah, and it's my honor to introduce Mary Goddard. Mary is a Tlingit artist, filmmaker, and cultural storyteller from Sitka, Alaska. So I think it's kind of cool that tonight all three of us participating from Alaska and all are in three different Southeast Alaska communities. Um, Dedicated to sharing and teaching Alaska Native culture through lived experience, storytelling, and place-based knowledge. With over 20 years of experience, Mary weaves together history, land, and contemporary Indigenous life in ways that are both accessible and deeply rooted in cultural values. She is co-owner of Midnight Run LLC and founder of Alaska Mary LLC, and her work spans documentary filmmaking, tourism, and original art and jewelry inspired by Tlingit design and the natural world. She also hosts the Connect Plus Culture Plus Cause podcast, amplifying conversations around Indigenous voices, community, and cultural resilience. Her recent 90-Day Native project and forthcoming documentary follow her journey of living solely off traditionally harvested foods, a powerful exploration of food sovereignty, wellness, and cultural reconnection.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us. We're thrilled to have all of you here. We're thrilled to be able to both celebrate Vivian together and also to learn more about your work and explore all of our relationship with salmon and with the natural world. We have a a well-earned tradition here at Torrey House Press that we typically like to give a writer both first and last word. So to kick things off, I'm going to ask Vivian to read a poem from the collection, and I believe she's going to be reading the opening poem. Though those of us listening are not necessarily on screen, and certainly everyone is muted, this is the moment where we get to all pretend like we are in whatever the coolest coffee shop you've ever been to. And for those of you who have not been to many poetry readings, we're going to snap for applause. So please put that energy into the world wherever you are, as we say thank you following this and perhaps a couple other readings that are coming up. Thanks so much. Vivian.
Yeah, this is the first poem in the book. So if you do have a copy of the book, it's on page 1, I guess it's the first poem. And this poem is called What We Are About to Receive. Blessed be the long ago, mud sloughing, stone rolling away from the ochre matrix, the gentle brush of dirt, fragments of fern and willow leaf, charcoal flecks, snail shells, length of antler, arrowhead. Bless my once anointed, oily crusted hands. Bless my oilless hands, the empty smokehouse, plate, and freezer offering itself to me now. Bless the sod house from upward Sun River, the central hearth now cold. Bless my long, thin knife resting in the rain on my table next to the sea. Bless this which we do not receive, which does not melt on our tongues. But bless, oh bless, the 2 baby girls, unborn and born, wrapped in shrouds, fabric long ago decayed, buried with a dog salmon.
Thank you. All right. As we kick it off, I'm gonna actually attempt to share my screen and play a brief video from Salmon State, and we're gonna talk about some salmon, friends. Let's go. Right. And all right. In theory, maybe not. We'll see what happens. Okay, there we go. Um,
So think of a salmon. Do it now. Close your eyes. Think of a salmon.
Well, the first thing that came is salmon is life.
There's a lot of things, but the first thing I think is salmon is life.
Well, I would say salmon is a way of life.
Salmon is life.
Salmon is the continuity of life and the lifeblood of the Pacific Northwest.
Salmon is life. It's everything to us.
I can't say it any better than she did. Salmon is life.
Salmon is good to eat.
Thank you. Um, so I'm going to start by asking all three of you, tell us a little bit about your relationship to salmon. What does salmon mean to you? What role does salmon play in the life that you are living?
Can we just say salmon is life? Right?
Yep.
Absolutely. No, I love that film because it really must have made an impression because when I was first invited to speak, the thing that came to my mind was salmon is life. And I think it's so true. It's like, especially being here on the, Northwest coast or in Southeast Alaska, it's like everything evolves around salmon. And of course, when we're talking about the last challenge I did, 90 Day Native, that was my breakfast every single day, just about was salmon. And so, yeah, I can definitely connect to that. Salmon is life, and it is something that sustains us.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, um, we made that as part of my work at Salmon State and Salmon Beyond Borders, one of our campaigns in particular. And I think the people in that video said it so well. I mean, salmon is so interconnected with everything in Alaska, and that was in British Columbia, upriver, in some of the rivers that flow from British Columbia, Canada, into Alaska. And so throughout the region, I mean, salmon literally bring life, from the oceans. They bring nutrients from the oceans, like into the landscape, into the trees. They feed hundreds of species, including us. And they're, absolutely integral to what it means to live here. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
There's a lot of salmon fishermen, commercial fishermen in my family, grandfather, father, grandfather, great grandfather, things like that. So I was just thinking about, what Mary was doing, her project of eating salmon every morning. And I thought, I bet you one of my first foods probably might have been salmon, probably a lot of us in Alaska, we got some nice soft flesh salmon, whether it was smoked, hopefully it was smoked. But I remember my dad making a lot of pickled salmon, and that wasn't my favorite, but it was interesting to eat anyway. But yeah, salmon's just a part of our lives.
Yeah. So I know we've got a number of folks who are joining us who are also in Alaska. But for those of us who are not, and I'm somebody who grew up in Salt Lake City, spent most of my adult life on the East Coast of the US and ended up back here with my family a few years ago. And for me, salmon primarily has been, a thing that is at the Whole Foods fish counter, right? And so my experience as a mountain and desert boy is one of being being hungry, both literally, but also sort of hungry for knowledge. And so I'm curious, what are the different ways that you encounter salmon where you are? Where are you when you encounter salmon? What are you doing? What does that look like? Help us imagine that for those of us who have a very, very different commodified experience of salmon as product rather than salmon as both living creature and way of life.
Oh man, that's just a good question because, I didn't want to just jump in since I jumped in first the last time, but it's literally like out my door, I can see the ocean and, there's salmon all around us. We can't wait to go salmon fishing. We can't wait for like the king opener. There's always all this excitement around fishing for salmon. For me, even though my family grew up as fishermen, I was mostly in the kitchen. So when it comes to salmon for me, it's about smoking it, drying it, cooking with it, eating it, bringing it to someone's house. It becomes a gift. And then, of course, as an artist and a filmmaker, you'll see, my work is rooted in culture and rooted in Alaska. And so, whether it's in 90 Day Native, you'll see me fishing, you'll see me eating fish, you'll see me cooking fish, drying it, smoking it. But then in my artwork, right? Like got some salmon skin earrings that I made. You'll see salmon designs in my, in my, I guess, bigger Alaska Native work as well. And then you'll see fish and you'll see salmon in my Tlingit film, The Woman Who Married a Bear. And so for me, it is a really integral part of my life, and it's everywhere. It's in what I eat, in my clothing, in my art. It's in my front yard. It's in my backyard. So it really is everywhere.
Um,
So,
before before we ask MC and Vivian to share as well, can you just translate a phrase for a Utah boy? What does king opener mean?
oh yeah, like any, I guess people get excited for like when do the Winter Kings come in, and when especially I have a 10-year-old son, so when do the fishing seasons open, the different fishing seasons when you can go out and fish. And so I'm learning so much more about fishing because I have a 10-year-old son who is so into it. But like I said, like growing up, even though my whole family were family of fishermen, I mostly spent time in the kitchen. So I didn't really get to do a lot of the fishing. And it really was through like 90 Day Native that I was like, man, I got to get out there and get the fish myself. And so I had my first experience dip netting. And it's pretty wild. It's unbelievable to think that it's taken me this many years to actually get out there and go fishing myself.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the importance of salmon here really can't be overstated. And so I think the only person between the three of us who didn't grow up here. I grew up in Virginia and then I moved to Alaska in 2009 for the first time. And I think, it's interesting, like, I mean, to us, like living in Alaska, salmon really is life. It's interconnected. It's connected to so many things. It's funny you were talking about the first foods that children eat. The first foods that my oldest son ate, the first food was salmon. It was salmon that we mashed up and then mixed it with breast milk, and that was his first food. And so, there's that. It's a huge part of. I mean, so there's. I mean, traditional ways of life. People have fished for salmon for 10,000 years here, sustainably. And then this is like throughout Alaska. I mean, Western Alaska, Bristol Bay, like, yeah, all Southeast Alaska where we are, so many different parts. And then it's also a huge part of our economy. Like we've all, said we're connected in some way to people who commercial fish. So here in Southeast Alaska, there are a ton of people. Like there are fishing permits in basically every community in Southeast Alaska. People going out and catching the fish that hopefully show up in your local market, delivered with love. So, you know, and then ecologically, they are just incredibly important. Like salmon nutrients from the ocean are literally in the trees here in Southeast Alaska, the Tongass National Forest,
Yeah.
because salmon bring them in. And I don't know how familiar everybody is with the life cycle of a salmon, but there are 5 species that come back to Alaska. King salmon, what Mary was talking about, which is the biggest one, and they're the ones that spend the longest amount of time in the ocean. Sockeye salmon, coho salmon, pink salmon, and chum salmon. And they all spend different amounts of time out in the ocean and in their freshwater streams. But when they come back, they die. And uh, the nutrients that they brought back from the ocean literally end up in the trees, feeding the land. So, yeah, I mean, it just really can't be overstated, the importance of it. And there's so many, I think, intersections for all of us with salmon. And I'm also wearing some salmon bling tonight. Some earrings a friend of mine made, with salmon skin, and a different friend made this one. So yeah, it's everywhere. Salmon is everywhere.
Beautiful.
Yeah, my first job, one of my first, I'd say, real tough jobs was deckhanding at age 13 on a commercial salmon fishing boat that was a friend of my parents. Eddie Calkins. And so his daughter, Elsie, and I went out as deckhands. And so I got really good at filleting the salmon, for cleaning them. And yeah, it was quite the experience to be out on the ocean and catching all those fish. And I think there must have been hundreds that we caught over the, course of a couple days. And so, and I, ended up using the knowledge that I had of listening to my dad's stories and creating poems and creative nonfiction, because I realized that the stories of fishing and salmon were so much a part of our life. So I started doing that about over 10 years ago, because we used to jokingly call my dad, because he was an expert king salmon. Well, he was a king salmon snob, we kind of called ourselves, but we jokingly called him the king of kings, but not Jesus. So was his title. But he was really good at catching king salmon commercially, but also subsistence, just going out, getting your food. And one time it was my birthday, and he says, I'm going to go out and catch you a king salmon. And he got up early in the morning on my birthday, and he was back before a couple hours, because you got to get up really, really early. And he went trolling in his little skiff, which trolling is you just go really slow with your lines in the water. And he came back, and I have a photograph. He's gone now, but I have this photograph of him holding up the king salmon for my birthday.
So, Vivian, you have written and published many books of poetry. Why salmon? Why now?
This project, the whole book, is about 7 years ago. I was collecting my dad's stories, and I kept writing poetry about salmon or experiences and learning from my dad about salmon. So I already had poems in progress when I applied for a Rasmussen Fellowship grant, which is one of the largest ones we have for creatives, artists, and writers in Alaska. And that was 2019. And they gave me a grant to write salmon poetry. And so I would just sit there thinking, wow, I get paid to write poems about salmon. So I started researching more things, learning about Salmon State and Salmon Beyond Borders, things like that, and the science behind how they even forecast salmon. And so I would just write poems. And when I started sending it out, when I completed the manuscript and then compiled the poems, and then you send them out into the world to see if anybody wants salmon poems, and nobody seemed to really want this manuscript. So I was getting frustrated. And I was on Twitter. It was Twitter then, before it was X. And I complained a little bit. Like, I think I must have gotten a rejection. And I said, doesn't anybody out there want a salmon manuscript? Because, who wants to read about salmon? 40 poems. Well, someone in in Utah, of all places, Kirsten, tweeted back to me and said, Tory House Press would like to see your manuscript. And I thought, what's Tory House Press? I hadn't heard of them. But anyway, of course, I Googled and thought, Utah? What would Utah want with salmon? But then I looked in the book catalog, and there was a name I recognized, Craig Childs, who had been a guest writer at the MFA that I was in, and then Jerry Brightwell. Oh, there was an Alaskan, and I thought, But their catalog had no poetry. Oh, it had Linda Hogan, which I had a copy of her book on my shelf, but there was no poetry. So I kind of put it off of submitting. And then I thought, well, maybe I should. I think I got another rejection. And I thought, well, this woman wants to take a chance with me. So at least she's going to read it. She could, what's the worst you could say? It's just no. But she said yes. So that's how they believed in all these salmon poems and salmon. And the interesting thing is, she put it out in the universe that she actually wanted, Kirsten wanted to publish, and I think it was poetry about salmon. So somewhere our universe is connected. So
Yeah, so she's been hungering for a graphic novel about salmon was what she thought she was asking for, but it turns out the book she was asking for was this one. So Kirsten Johanna Allen, who is my wonderful co-executive director and the publisher and co-founder of Tory House Press. First of all, she sends her love and affection. She is not able to be here tonight because she is at her daughter's birthday dinner. So I get the joy of filling in. If you have not read A History of Kindness by Linda Hogan, it is absolutely an unbelievable collection. We are not a poetry press. We had not done poetry prior to doing that book with Linda. And, Linda is a legendary Indigenous writer and just an unbelievable human. And so if there's a chance to do a book with Linda, you do a book with Linda. And if Linda says we're doing poetry, you do poetry. So I've been with Tory House Press for 4 years and joined shortly after this was published in March of 2020. And we, thought it was a book that, fine, we'll do it. It'll do what it does. Last year, in its fifth year, it was our fourth top-selling title. It's just a book that the world is genuinely hungry for. And we have always talked about Tory House Press as a place that is a home for fiction that is deeply connected to the natural world and for creative nonfiction and investigative nonfiction about the environment and about conservation. And we did one book of poetry. We are not a place that was looking to do other poetry, and we are now a place that describes herself as a publishing house that does creative nonfiction, fiction, and poetry. And that is in large part because we came across this beautiful collection that, yeah, this would be a dream and an honor to be a home for the Divination of Salmon and to get to work with Vivian. And so you have helped change the trajectory of the press, and we're thrilled to get to evolve in what we need to be able to work with writers like you. I'm curious, was there a moment that you can remember? And the answer might just be no, in which case we can move on to other things. But was there a moment where it shifted from I'm writing poems about salmon or I'm writing poems inspired by my father's stories to, oh, this feels like a book? Like what does that feeling look like for you? And you're like, oh, there's a thing here as a collection rather than just as a project or as poems.
I think I was always thinking when I write poetry, it tends to come in like chunks of themes. So I'm kind of aware now that my process is it could turn into a book because I have, or at least a chapbook, which is a smaller group of poems. But it was real hard to think of when I got the grant. Okay, I got to write how many salmon poems?
Yeah.
Really, that's a lot. And I wasn't sure if I could actually do it, but they were, sometimes I would write a couple of them a day. So, and then when your daughter is named after a salmon, then, you write one about your daughter. So I did do that. My youngest daughter is named after a salmon, her Tlingit name.
Very cool. So I called Kirsten on my drive home today, and I was like, so there was a question I forgot to ask you. Just what's your favorite thing about the reading experience of this book, either just as a reader or as an editor? And her answer feels so deeply connected to what all three of you have been talking about, which was that this is a book that just shows you how many ways there are of being in relationship with salmon and in relationship with place. And for those of us who who don't think about that or aren't living that every day, that especially for her as an editor, the variety of poetry and the variety of both styles and forms that you use really reinforced that understanding. And I completely get what she means as somebody who has read the book a couple of times now. Um, and I'm curious, are there any poems that jump out to you where there was a certain form or a certain approach to the storytelling or to the language that felt really, really right for a particular topic or a particular moment or a particular salmon? Does that very, very nerdy process question make sense?
It is. Thank you for the nerdy question. I belong to, I co-facilitate two writers groups, Blue Canoe Writers, and some of you are probably here, and the Drumlin Poets, and some of you are probably here from that. And so we practice forms of poetry and just, trying to write. And I had one that I think we were doing a dictionary poems. And so I did end up having sometimes when you have a topic and you're not sure what you want to do with it, like let's say salmon. And so you can take the idea of salmon and then put it you look at Webster's dictionary and see how they format an entry. And you kind of copy that idea and then you put how you perceive this certain topic, like salmon, in and you number 1, 2 definition, 3 definition, 4, and put it in a paragraph form. So you'll see that. I think it's on page 10 in the book where it's a dictionary poem. And I kind of like that prose because it's a prose poem, but a list poem too. So and I used that form to kind of define what divination is and divining fish and things like that. So,
Can I put you on the spot and ask you to read for us?
oh yeah, I could read it.
Okay, thanks.
I'll read it from the galley. So it has my notes on the pronunciation of the lovely scientific word. See, when you're writing poems and using scientific documents, you also have to learn how to pronounce the lovely words too. So,
And when you're writing from Alaska, your publisher can't always get you copies of your own book before pub day, but
yes, it's en route from
we promise.
Seattle, the boxes. That's what this post office says. So ichthyology is the study of fish. And so this dictionary poem is ichthyomancy. So that's the title of the dictionary poem. And I will read you all the definitions that are in this little paragraph. Ichthyomancy, it's a noun. 1, the divination of fish. We watch the ocean for jumps and ripples and flashes of light. 2, a sea lion splashes, rises from the sea, shaking its head with a mouthful of salmon. We yell and point out, and out come the binoculars. 3, witness. 4, the next day we catch 2 salmon. 5, divination of entrails. My father slices a salmon, pulls guts and gills, holds a salmon heart in his hands. 6, we make offerings to gods, save bright orange eggs, toss the skin and salmon head for eagles. 7, blood soaks my father's t-shirt, blood splotches to his elbows. 8, he recalls his first king salmon, caught with a stick rod, pulling him around in his tiny skiff. 9, he recalls his favorite lures, the Hoona spoon and Little Joe, another time when a hook jabbed into his hand, nearly pulling him overboard. 10, now we offer memories, learn how to interpret omens of a good fishing season or an unknown voyage, this latest storm, this fat slice of fish sizzling in the pan, this warming sea. And I do have Little Joe right there. This is kind of my dad, little altar. My dad's here in spirit. There's little Joe. This is a paddle my dad um, painted for me, an old paddle, and it's a salmon that he has drawn. And there's a picture of my dad as a young man in his canoe. Anyway.
Thank you. It's
But I
a
think this is my dad made this. He carved it. Commercial salmon trolling gear.
wonderful.
I just love that, Vivian. And then being able to see your dad, it makes me a little teary-eyed. I mean, it's been years since I've seen him and, since his passing, but you can really tell in your poems that you love your father dearly.
Well, and it's a perfect transition to let's talk about salmon and art. Mary, this is a very unfair question for you, which is it was there, a moment that salmon entered into your work as an artist, or my hypothesis is it's probably been there from the beginning. But talk to me a little bit about how conscious that was, and sort of what that's looked like for you as an artist and in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a really good question. And something that we've always learned is like what is in you ultimately is going to come out in your artwork. And so obviously, growing up in Alaska, I grew up in Yakutat, which is a small fishing village at the very tip of Southeast Alaska. And, we ate salmon day in, day out. Um, Granted, during my childhood years, I was convinced I was a city girl. I'm like, Manhattan, here I come. I am not a village girl. And and I was a city girl for a while and I loved it. But it wasn't really until I came back to Alaska about 16 years ago that I really realized how the natural world shapes my art. And so when you look at Tlingit artwork in general, Tlingit artwork is well, drawn from the natural art, but it's also drawn from culture. And so in our Tlingit culture, we have two different moieties, which is eagle and raven. And then under those moieties, there's houses and crests. And so some people belong to like the salmon house, or, I belong to the bear house. And so I began drawing on a lot of the Tlingit stories and the Tlingit artwork there. But when, I work with natural materials, like fish skin is one of the things I incorporate. Um, and then also the fish design. So it really, I think consciously, it really wasn't until the last, handful of years that salmon really became a design element in my work, like the Tlingit form line salmon. I used the skin before, and used it as inspiration. Um, but now it's definitely more so. I was just commissioned to do a large copper salmon cutout for a bench inlay, and so that was a fun project. And I think people that are in Alaska and can really relate to some of the natural world things like salmon will incorporate that into art that they order from me. So, yeah, good question, but it's been fun. I incorporate it quite a bit. Oh, you're on mute, Will. Sorry.
Thank you. And a follow-up, and MC will come to you with this one as well, and Vivian, but can you talk a little bit about the the duality, or just the intersections of this, honoring a life form through your art that you have such a deep love and reverence for, but also something that is killed and eaten and consumed, and what sort of
Yeah.
the holistic relationship that happens in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the values that I believe most people native to Alaska, or Alaska natives and people that live here have, is that we value and respect the animal. And so when it comes to fish, you talk about, having I don't know. There's a video. Okay, so let me backtrack for just a second.
Yeah.
So 90 Day Native, I spent 90 days eating only what I could fish, forage, or hunt for. which meant salmon was included in my diet just about daily. And I talked about going fishing for kind of the first time, like dip netting. And when you dip net and you get a big scoop of salmon, you have to get a club and bop them over the head to kill them. And so obviously that was my least fun part. But in the way we grew up and then in our Tlingit culture, it's when an animal you kill, you say it gave its life for you. And so it changes the shift of like you're killing something to this sacrifice its life so that you can continue on. And so with that, you want to respect the animal and everything of it, right? So nothing goes to waste. So every part of that salmon was utilized to the best of my ability. The salmon was eaten. I even ate the head. Um, you can use the skin for artwork, and everything is utilized to its fullest. And that's the way you respect and give new life to the thing that gave its life for you.
We were chatting a little bit before everything started. I have a 9.5-year-old in the other room. There is a 10-year-old downstairs over at Mary's place. And you were saying that, you've gotten more into fishing because it's something that your child is really drawn to in a way that, isn't necessarily reflective of your own childhood in the kitchen, right? What has surprised you most about, or like what have you discovered that is new about salmon or about your relationship with salmon through the lens either of parenting or of fishing, but of layering that piece into your own life?
Yeah, good question. It's just really interesting because my passion has always been in the foraging or the cooking or the artwork and not so much the actual fishing or hunting, anything like that. And, along comes this little boy, that's my son. And the last couple years, he is obsessed with fishing. And I'm not talking about he's just interested. He is, why do I have to go to school? I should be out there fishing. Um, and and for those of the people that know him know he's a natural teacher. And so as much as I was like, yep, go enjoy fishing with your father or go, enjoy it. He's like, oh no, I'm gonna teach you. And so it's the just those little interactions of having to go down to the dock, not having, getting to go down to the dock with him and he's like, this is how put a hook on your line and this is how you cast. And I guess it's been different to not, I'm used to being the teacher in this instance, but one of the things when you have a child, they say, let them follow their passion and encourage it. And so in order to encourage that passion, I'm participating so much in that. And so, I'm learning things like this is a better way to cast, how to cast a line. This is how you sharpen a fish hook. Just little nuances like that. Just been a lot of fun. Yeah.
So, MC, coming from Virginia, where where and when did you decide that, salmon was going to be a part of your path personally and professionally? How did you end up here?
Yeah. Well, I've been here now for it was 17 years ago that I first moved here, which for me, I had lived kind of a peripatetic life up until then. And I think, Sterling's question in the chat is a really good one, and it's really interesting. Like personally, when I first moved to Alaska, I was vegetarian, and it was because I felt like if I couldn't kill something, then I shouldn't be eating it, and different people have different, reasons for that. But to me, I think one of the most incredible things about living here is developing a kind of relationship with lands that I never had before anywhere else. And that relationship with the land is intimately tied to salmon, to hunting, to fishing, to what Mary is talking about, to foraging, to like getting your food from the land and it providing for you. Um, and it honestly it's a real gift. I mean, it's kind of incredible to be like, looking out the window and you're like, oh, oh, these little shoots are starting to come up. I'm gonna collect them. And like just out the back door from my house, in a few months, there's the Mendenhall Glacier. Well, the Mendenhall Glacier is there right now, but in a few months, salmon are going to be returning to the streams around the Mendenhall Glacier. And 100 years ago, there were no salmon in those streams because it was the glacier. The streams didn't exist. But now, the glacier has receded, and salmon are just this like incredible. I mean, they are a life force, like we were talking about at the beginning of the book, and they bring life into land. And they're also just this like symbol of hope. I mean, they come to areas that didn't previously had salmon, and they bring so much with them. And so I think, I think I decided, like, after moving here, I mean, honestly, salmon are the most delicious food you will ever eat in your life. I'm not just saying that, like, they really are. They are amazing. I think my favorite food in the world is smoked salmon, specifically canned smoked salmon. And it's like there are very few foods out there that not only taste incredible, but make you feel good. Like you're doing your body a favor when you are eating wild salmon. Um, and so, yeah, everything about salmon, I mean, really is a gift to be able to to participate in that, to go fishing for them. Um, and to be able to share that, like Mary was saying, with our kids, we got a boat last year and got to go out coho fishing in August, trolling like Vivian was talking about. And it was it was the best. And just there's something really special about being able, like having that connection to land, to where you live, and to being able to, we call it fill your freezers. Alaskans have more freezers per capita than any other state in the union. Paradoxically, people think, oh, it's cold, but we have freezers because we're storing our fishing game that we
That
collect.
is such a delightful fact. All of my Utah is off the charts on this. Stats are bizarre and depressing. So here's to freezers for sure. I was not expecting to ask for specific food recommendations, but let's do it since we're here. So if canned smoked salmon is one of your favorites, is there anything that we should try and track down and try and get our hands on? Are there any particular canneries that you love or certain products, or like if you could send us on a salmon quest, what should we be trying to find to experience, your absolute favorites?
I can jump in just on providers since I'm already off mute and say, so Salmon State, basically we're a nonprofit entity. Like we do fisher advocacy for, basically for keeping wild salmon around. And part of that, in our opinion, is working with fishermen who fish sustainably and provide, responsibly sourced fish. So we have a section on our website that we call the marketplace. We don't make any money from it. Basically, we just want to spread the word about fishermen who've committed to sustainable practices and market directly. So, if you go to salmonstate.org/marketplace, oh, thank you, Will. Then, yeah, you'll be connected to a lot of amazing fishermen who directly market their salmon, and it's a great place to buy it.
Super cool.
Yeah, there's a little, we have fishermen here who sell, on the docks and have their little store too here in town. Brenda Schwartz, she's a fabulous artist, and her husband actually started selling some of their fishing, their halibut and other types of fish in their store too. And it's sustainable. They started shipping it out, but I order canned fish from if I'm out on my own pantry, which I did run out this year. It's a Wild Fish Cannery on Prince of Wales Island. They have more gourmet stuff, and it's really, really, I mean, you can get it canned with birch syrup or different
I
things.
tried wild fish coho in birch syrup for the first time
Yes.
last year, and it is beyond life-changing. Like it's one of those, if I had to pick five things to eat for the rest of my life, this is on that list. And I am on all of the email alerts for when it becomes available again this season. So nobody else
Yes.
will order it. I want it all. Love you.
Okay, well, you're in competition with me sending to my relatives.
Fine, I'll share. Seems like the right thing to do. Amazing.
But one, Mary, did you say?
So Tradish Fish, so Steve Johnson, who's a local fisherman here in Sitka, he was a mentor for me on 90 Day Native during that challenge. And he's the one who took me out dip netting and seaweed harvesting and stuff. Anyways, he has a small business where he does a smoked salmon, but he does it in the shelf-stable bags. So instead of like jars, you can mail them and they're just like these packets about this big. And they're just like what you would get in a like jarred smoked salmon. So really good and great for mailing too.
Very cool. All right. Well, as is the Torrey House Press way. So we were, founded as a press exploring the intersections of literary storytelling and environmental advocacy. So we have tricked you all here with poetry, and now it's time to talk about fishing policy. And you're stuck with us. So, MC, let's talk commercial fishing. We did our first oceans book last year by James. Why am I blanking on Jamie Workman's last name? And Amanda Leland, who's the executive director of Environmental Defense Fund, looking at kind of Gulf fishing policy and restoration. This is something where I'm assuming that we're doing everything right, right? It's America, it's capitalism, it's international waters. We're, really, really good at not exploiting the natural world. How's it going? How is commercial fishing land?
Great. Well, Vivian and Mary, feel free to jump in here. And I also see a couple of my colleagues, Heather and Melanie, are in the audience. So Heather and Melanie are both commercial fishermen themselves, so they can yeah speak even better than me about this. But I mean, I think there's a lot that is going right, and that's going very well. Like Bristol Bay. I don't. So if people aren't familiar with Bristol Bay, if you're not from Alaska, Bristol Bay is the home to the largest sockeye salmon like run in the world. There have been commercial fishing going on in Bristol Bay for more than 100 years, since I think the early 1890s. And just a few years ago, they were still breaking record after record in terms of the number of salmon coming back. It's in the tens of millions, like 70 million. I can't remember the exact record, but it's truly incredible. So you have, that's where Melanie fishes in the chat, and you have, yeah, it's just really incredible to have something, in today's world going that right and actually breaking records, in terms of like the number of animals that are coming back. And so, I think you can feel comfortable like buying wild Alaska salmon. There is one particular fishery that at Salmon State we do work around. It's not managed by the state, it's managed federally. And that fishery is called trawling. So it's very different, just so everybody's aware, from trolling. So trolling is the dragging a line that Vivian was talking about. Trawling is they have this enormous net, and it's the length of a football field. It can fit 747s. It catches a lot of fish. And basically, it's an industrial form of fishing that also bycatches a large amount of. So that means they're going after particular kinds of fish like pollock or bottom dwelling species, and they accidentally bycatch. They catch and discard a huge quantity of marine life, and so that is honestly a huge it's 141 million pounds of bycatch every year caught by trawlers, which is a huge amount. And it's become a big issue in Alaska, and I think it's one that most people in the lower 48 aren't as aware of. But 74% of Alaskans in a poll last year said they wanted to ban trawling entirely. And I think it's really come to a fore because we are seeing restrictions and closures in many different rivers in Alaska. king salmon have declined in some areas, particularly in Western Alaska, like Yukon River. Alaska Native peoples are not allowed to fish for king salmon for 7 years. And meanwhile, trawlers bycatch them just as kind of part of the cost of doing business. So don't buy fish sticks. But, I think there's a lot that's going right, but then there are also things that we could do better, specifically when it comes to industrial trawling and finding a better and more, basically managing an ecosystem, managing for the ecosystem instead of managing for one particular species and the ecosystem, managing like the Bering Sea as a fish stick factory, you know. Yeah, and anybody else feel free to jump in there.
I was just gonna say, like, and at Salmon State too, keep people up to date. So if people are wanting to follow along and know what's kind of going on with the policies and I guess salmon in Alaska, it's good to be able to sign up through your website and just keep up to date there.
Thanks so much for that plug, Mary. Yes, we do. Every Saturday, we send out an email on all things wild Alaska salmon that most weeks I draft with lots of help from the Salmon State team. So yeah, if you can sign up on our website, salmonstate.org, and if you're interested, I mean, we have a lot of different campaigns to do with wild salmon and keeping wild salmon around in Alaska. And yeah, thanks for the plug, Mary.
Are there any particular issues or legislation that like those of us who are in the lower 48 should just try and keep our ears peeled for this, that if we hear this stuff coming up, this is a good time for us to get in touch with legislators who are not necessarily tasked with representing the people of Alaska?
That's a great question. Yes. So, one of the recent success stories is Bristol Bay, the place that I mentioned, where sockeye salmon, also called red salmon, come back in such enormous numbers, is that there's a mine, proposed mine called the Pebble Mine that has been trying to develop, a giant mine there, a gold and copper mine for a very long time. And in four different administrations, hello there, four different presidential administrations have said basically this is a bad idea. This is the wrong mine in the wrong place. I mean, that's the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, and the second Trump administration is continuing to defend a Biden era veto of the Pebble mine, which basically says this mine, can't exist there. Pebble is continuing to fight to try and make it a reality. There was just an article. About that, in a local Alaska publication last week, basically saying, these investors think 20 years ahead, they still think it's going to happen at some point, in spite of the fact that there's an EPA veto. So I would say if you hear anything like that, there are a lot of, congressional supporters of doing the right thing. But, definitely that's one to have on your radar. And then another one is, there's not like an immediate lever for this, but one of our campaigns, the one where you guys watched the video from at the very start, is Salmon Beyond Borders. And basically, we need some kind of an international solution for this problem, which is that, we have these amazing rivers that flow from British Columbia, Canada, into Southeast Alaska, the Taku, the Sakine, the Unuk, the Salmon rivers. And there's a massive amount of staking and exploring and, operating. Basically, there are more than 100 mines in some stage of, exploration, development, operation, or abandonment just over the border in that region. And for a while, Alaskans have been asking for an international, basically something called the International Joint Commission to come in. And so if that, comes to fruition, that would definitely be something to tune in on. But I think maybe Mary's solution is the best, which is just stay up to date where you can. And please sign up for our newsletter.
Yeah, you had said something, well, it reminded me of like the bioregions, right? Like instead of just doing everything by this one area, it's like, how do we make these choices, whether it's across the borders or not, by the bioregions to make sure they're all protected? Um, and I just wanted to say something too. You had mentioned, MC, that a lot of people see Alaska as like resource rich. And it's like, well, there's so many resources, we could just go after them. But I think the idea would be that we were really thoughtful about it. And, this is how is it that we want our communities to be? Um, and, when it comes to kind of like the fish policies, even though I'm not in that and being a huge advocate that way, the way I kind of advocate is trying to connect people to their food sources so that they care about it. They care about it enough where they want to be stewards and protectors of, the land, the water, or in this case, salmon.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Oh, and then
Oh,
one more while I'm thinking is actually there is an open comment period right now for the Tongass, which is the southeast, the national forest here in Southeast Alaska. So basically it's the largest national forest in the country and it's part of the largest temperate rainforest in the world. And the administration is doing a couple of things. One is stripping birdless protections. So basically that was a rule that went in the early 2000s that said we're not building taxpayer funded roads for logging companies. And that rule is being stripped away. And but the one that there's a current comment period for is revising the management of the Tongass. And I think it's really important that like people speak to the importance of, managing for salmon, managing for wild foods, and managing for like what the people of Southeast Alaska actually want, which, people have spoken up for quite a while now and said, we don't want, industrial clear cut old growth logging. We want sustainable, like locally driven economies. And we want to have our wild foods. So definitely input there is always welcome.
great. So, Mary, can you tell us a little bit about 90 Day Native and that experience and how did that originate for you, as well as what's coming up this July and how folks might get involved either in Alaska or elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So 90 Day Native was a challenge that I created to eat only what I can fish, forage, or hunt for here in Alaska with a focus on Alaska Native foods. And one of the reasons I did that was, I really have a passion when it comes to localized foods. And I thought, over the years, and this is another way Vivian and I have connected is through our passion of foraging and harvesting what we can from the wilds. But I thought, what would it look like if I can eat off the land? Because I know my ancestors did, right? Like my Tlingit ancestors thrived here for tens of thousands of years, and now I feel like we've come so far away from our food, I guess our food system. We're disconnected from our food sources. And so, in an effort to kind of bring that to the light, I wanted to do something a little more drastic and to see, number one, do we really have the rich resources that we thought that we have here? Number two, can I actually live off the land in a way that's healthy? And so throughout this whole challenge, I was monitored by my doctors, and we tracked my health through the whole process. And I guess the biggest realization that I had through 90 Day Native was that we are very low in carbs. And so this is where salmon really came to play because that, especially that king salmon where it's really fatty, really sustained me. So sustained by a lot of that fat. But when it comes to living off the land, there's a lot of knowledge that you need. And because of the assimilation and colonization of our cultures for nearly 200 years, we lost a lot of information. And so we were disconnected from, what are the plants that we can forage and harvest for, as well as a lot of traditional knowledge about how to preserve and put up your food. And so I really wanted to bring that to the forefront and be able to try to see what we're missing, where are the gaps, and where are our strengths. And so I was successful in doing 90 days. It generated a ton of interest throughout Alaska. And so I'm working with the Alaska Food Web, and we are doing a 3-day challenge for participants that want to try living this lifestyle just for 3 days. And you'll be able to register on my website at alaskamary.com. The registration will open up probably mid-June, and then the contest, not the contest, but the challenge will be, I believe it's like July 25th, 26th, 27th, or somewhere in there, that third week of July. And so you will, I'll send you information of how to prep for that, how to prepare, as well as some recipes and some foraging and plant identification tips. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And
So,
I was just gonna say, and if people want to kind of find out a little bit more about the 90-day native challenge, if you go to YouTube, the Alaska Mary channel, there's a whole we documented it for social media every week of the challenge, so you can just see the challenges and the progression. And then the goal is to finish up a full-length documentary on it.
so I have a very lower 48 question for you, which is the relationship that you have with salmon just the thing that we happen to talk about? And there are other, other parts of the natural world or other food sources that sort of feel as ubiquitous and as deeply connected? Or is there something about salmon specifically that kind of sets it apart as the relationship with salmon is sort of a unique piece of this conversation?
Yeah, it's definitely a unique piece of this conversation, and it's I think, I've always loved salmon. I've always appreciated it. I always had this relationship with it prior, but it really was magnified during the 90-day native challenge because I realized the Tlingit people were called people of the tides. And we still are. And it was so evident through this challenge why we're called people of the tides. I mean, we really rely on food that comes from the ocean and from the tides to sustain ourselves. And the salmon brings abundance. It brings that fatty nutrition, nutritious meat. And it just, yeah, it just, I guess, really magnified my love and my need for salmon.
Mm.
Did that answer your
Yeah,
question well?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, and I think like there are foods, like I write a newspaper column that goes out to Alaska papers sometimes, and the most recent one came out last week, and it's about wild foods and like the number of foods across southern coastal Alaska that people harvest. There's more than 96, which I think, the study author said he thought it was really double that. But that's just, sometimes things are classified as like rockfish instead of an individual kind of rockfish or something. Um, and certainly people have like strong relationships with some of those individuals' foods, like whether it be like herring or, it's like a black-tailed deer. But I think there's no other food like across the state that brings people together the way that salmon does. I mean, that's why the organization I work for is called Salmon State. I mean, it's like a state of mind, but then also it's something that really does, like, people care deeply about and is incredibly important to people all across the state in so many different ways.
Yeah, and like during that challenge too, it was like, I started off foraging and like making all these teas and drying all these plants. And then I soon realized, like, wow, if I'm gonna survive for 90 days, I need something that's like nutrient dense and
Mm.
calorie rich. And as much as I would have loved to find it in some fiddleheads, um, really found it in salmon.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd encourage everybody to go to Mary's channel there and look at all those videos. listen to them and support the work she's going to be doing on the larger documentary if you got a few dollars to donate for that. But it's going to be incredible. And I can't believe she even did that. I was following her, and I'd
Really
wake up in
cool.
the morning and go, wonder how Mary, if she survived during the night, you know? And she would give you an update on how she was feeling, and even the nutritionist talking to her, and what she was eating. And I remember one of her posts was, I think Riker, her son, had was a friend over and was having nachos, and Mary very sadly was showing the nachos picture, and then what hers was. But you know, it might have been salmon, but it was a ways into the 90 days where she was missing a little bit of other foods. But
Yeah.
she's very good to at this filmmaking, so I'd encourage people to go check out 90 Day Native.
Thank you so
Mary, do
much.
you have an estimated like a goal for when you want the documentary to come out?
Yeah, we were really hoping to kind of wrap up the at least the main edit by September, like the first draft by September. But it's really hard because my business partner Dave Fedorsky, who did the filming with me, this really was a passion project. So, we did this for 6 months, and then we did prior to that, The Woman Who Married a Bear, or a short Tlingit film, and it was all pretty much passion projects. We're like, let's go all in. And so now we're both trying to hit the ground, trying to make some money so we can keep up with some of these passion projects. So if we get
Yeah.
some funding for 90 Day Native, which I'm actively looking for, we should probably have the first, at least something cut together by, I don't know, late fall. Again, depends on funding. Yeah.
Can't wait to see it.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. Yeah. And I'll keep posting updates, so check back.
And we'll include some of those links when we send out a follow-up tomorrow.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
Last question as we wrap up. So there's a great comment from Nika, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. How about that smell after they spawn? You always know where the spawning streams are, and to be careful of bears loving salmon too. And that's just such a vivid description. I'm curious, are there any particular moments or memories or sensory experiences that just jump out for you as you think about like what does what does salmon mean like viscerally to you? Are there any moments that jump out?
I think there's so many. Um, for me, I had some restricted eating due to some health issues a while back, and it wasn't the same as nearly as cool as your 90 Day Native, Mary, but I was very restricted, but I could eat salmon. And I remember bringing um, salmon on a river trip, and I brought my canned salmon, somebody else brought canned salmon. We were just like switching canned salmon and talking about our recipes. And I think like salmon really connects people here. It's like, and it's very much like a culture of sharing. And um, like salmon are themselves a gift, and so um, yeah, sharing that gift with others. And then I love the image of the bears. My partner Bjorn is a bear guy, and we've been out on a lot of, he was a bear viewing guide for a number of years, and spent a lot of time on bear streams. Well, our streams with salmon running when bears are there, brown bears are there fishing. And it's true. Yeah, it's very visceral.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's like, with my son going fishing, it's like he gets to, since he was a kid, see the salmon when they're just little tiny baby salmon. And then when they come all the way back and they spawn, and I guess the excitement for him and for me to be able to see it through his eyes, the salmon spawning, and, he's like, oh, there's zombie fish. Like, the bears are out, the fish are decaying. And as morbid as it sounds, it just symbolizes like this whole cycle of life. And it's just fascinating to be able to see and to be part of. Do I enjoy the smell of salmon spawning? Absolutely not. And it's worse when your dog decides to go munch on some or roll in it, and you're left with that smell for a while. So, there's definitely there it salmon definitely has its full cycle, and being able to be in Alaska and witness the whole cycle is pretty amazing.
Vivian, anything?
Yeah, salmon smell when they're dying. Yeah. And you got to keep you got to keep your dog from rolling in it. Yep, that's what you do. But you can collect the bones and make jewelry out of them. And there's one woman in Sitka who collected thousands of salmon bones, and she made a dress. By the way, Google that, the salmon bone dress.
Yes. Cindy
Yes.
Gibson, I believe,
Yes,
right?
Cynthia Gibson made
Yeah.
the dress out of salmon bones, and it's pretty incredible. And yes, I do have dried salmon bones um, in my art studio and halibut bones too. So
That's one thing I didn't have on the 90-day native challenge. A native food is called stinkhead, and that's where the fish head is buried and it's fermented
you
and
didn't
rot.
try it?
I did not.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my opportunity, I guess, but I passed on that one. Maybe next time. Yeah.
Well, as you saw, we had a special delivery from my son Jackson, who was bringing me the other two Alaska books. So if you're interested in some really fantastic fiction, one from an Alaska writer and one that is set in Alaska by a glaciologist and one of the few women who is a National Geographic Society fellow. Jerry Brightwell's novel Turnback Ridge came out at the end of 2022. It is a cli-fi thriller. It's fantastic and currently being read by 600 or 700 people in Southern California as a big community read
Nice.
that I believe Jerry is doing the live event for with all of them tomorrow. And M. Jackson's novel Ice to Water, which is a sort of dark, literary, beautiful novel about place and healing and finding ourselves is also available. So we just set up a 20% discount code for everybody. It is, and this is going to shock you, Salmon, which will give you a discount on Vivian's book and anything else from the Torrey House Press store. I will drop that into the chat. Um, it's been a wonderful evening, a wonderful experience getting to hear from and get to know and learn from all of you, and especially being able to, think through how we're connected to both the creatures around us and to the things that sustain us. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your knowledge, your art, your work, and especially as somebody in the lower 48, and somebody who is coming to you from the historic lands of the Ute, Goshute, Shoshone, and Paiute peoples, to just be able to have a deeper understanding of Indigenous ways of being and knowledge, and ways that we're going to be able to put things that many people have known for a very, very long time into practice and into policy through great groups and great partners like Salmon State. So just deeply appreciative, Mary and MC, for joining us, Vivian for your work and your words. And as we are wont to do, I want to make sure to give you the last word. So could you please share another, couple poems with us as we close, and then we will all head off into the evening for whatever deliciousness awaits each of us. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I do want to thank MC and Mary for joining me, making this a little less nervous so we can talk about you. And I want to read the dedication in the book. It's dedicated to the memory of my father, to all my family, friends, and community who love salmon and rely on salmon, and to my youngest daughter, who's named after a salmon. So that might have been Nika that posed the stinky salmon question, but if you're still here, Nika, this poem kind of reflects the interwoven relationship of salmon. We even name our kids after salmon, and my daughter Nika got her name at a naming ceremony in Glacier Bay National Park when we were there speaking Tlingit for 10 days. Now, you did 90-day native and you ate food from the land. Our family and other families spoke only Tlingit for 10 days, and it was really hard, right, Nika? And anyway, she got the name Chuskubutla, which is mother of Humpy Tail. And if you know the weaver, Terry Rothgar, who has since passed, Nika is a clan sister to her and a relative. So Nika got her name. But this poem is called This Early Migration. At a 1-degree rise near midnight, a scrape of floorboard clacks like stones, like a silty river spilling between my sleeping breaths. I awaken and rise, pausing at my bedroom doorway. At the front door, you, daughter, 3 years old in your rubber boots, your coat upside down, your pudgy hands hold the doorknob. Experts say it's all about timing and rapid microevolution in these warmer years. A gene switch is a door left unlatched. I want to ask you where you're going, because pink salmon have the weakest homing instinct. Mother of Humpy Tail, your traditional name, Chuskuutla, woman who calls pink salmon back to the stream. The knob turns, open the door. Our wood stove smoke meanders in cottony mist through trees, and the porch light moon sways on water. The open door welcomes dark night air, and a rush of river carpets the floor with 1,000 swishing fins, some hook-jawed and humped. I don't really need to know where you're headed, child. These emergences and out-migrations are often the heaviest during the darkest hours. They press cool water against my calves before. There's another one for that. Anyway, this story is, here's the last. Flow our meditations around our boots, press against our ankles, let work-weary backs, blistered hands, and mud and dirt on our faces. Anyway, Nika ended up trying to sneak out at 3 years old in the middle of the night. So I had to start locking the doors. But we're incorporating the story of her going out and her name and things like that. So into this poem. Anyway, I think I kind of messed up the poem, but Nika, it's your fault. Thought about the stinky salmon. And I have one more I can end this with, and I think this is one, I'm not sure where this one is in the book, but it's called Fishing from the Skiff. And this is a time my father took me out in his little skiff, which was a little lund, if you know anything about, it's a small skiff, at about 4 a.m. Fishing from the skiff. The salmon drinks the last of a moonlit wave, and night drips a fog bank into day. A crack in this morning's first moments glints like a herring splash on green sea. A turn my elder father senses, so he stands up in his skiff and it wobbles. He holds his pole and drops in a line, rigged with lead and a cedar-pegged herring. Shadows shift near shore and dawn gathers fog, melts it across hemlocks. We slow troll the small motor, puttering through water, and beneath us the salmon opens wide, offering life for life. The line jerks hard and zings, pulls down then out, and with a wind of wrist and bend and tug of arm, we greet first light and first salmon as if we have newly arisen into this wonder. Yeah, my dad could kind of predict when the salmon were going to bite, and if he did this, this, and this, and it happened. So.
All right. Well, Vivian, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Mary Catherine, Scout, thank you for your help. And have a marvelous evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Congratulations, Vivian.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Mary.
Such
Thank you,
a
MC.
marvelous book.
Thank you, Will.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye.